Hello, firearms friends. In front of me, I have three of the rarest semi-automatic rifles in existence. Right here at Rock Island Auction Company. These are going to be for sale in August, and I am excited. I am very excited today to share these with you. These are all from the early 1900s, so turn of the century, semi-automatic rifle development was in full swing. These early high-power semi-automatic rifles are important developmental pieces. And at this time, nobody could quite figure it out. There was a lot of trial and error happening. Mind you, these were trying to shoot the full power rounds, such as at the front of the table, this is in 7mm Mauser. This is a model 1908 Mondragon semi-automatic rifle with a huge snail drum magazine on it. We'll get into that in a minute. That is incredible. In the middle here, we have a Mauser Model 1916, chambered in 8mm Mauser. And at the tail here, we have a Japanese copy of a Pederson rifle, manufactured at Kawashikawa Arsenal, chambered in 6.5 Japanese. So, semi-automatic rifle development was something that a lot of militaries were looking into actually as early as the tail end of the 1890s, but nothing at that point was even close to remotely acceptable. So early 1900s stuff started getting there. Mondragon, the inventor of this, Manuel Mondragon, was a Mexican officer, later general. He originally started with smokeless powder rifles in the late 1890s that actually had slam fire capability. So they were bolt actions that could be slam fired. And then he started developing semi-automatics at the turn of the 1900s. And he eventually came up with this. This is the final iteration, the model 1908. And so these were manufactured in Switzerland for the Mexican Army on contract. They originally contracted for 4,000 of these rifles, and they only ever ended up getting something like 400 delivered, is what's believed to have gotten to Mexico before the Mexican Revolution broke out. And so what happened with the rest of the rifles, they got diverted to Germany for use during World War I. And these were chambered in 7mm Mauser. 7mm Mauser was the standard Mexican Army round of the time. They were using those in the Mauser rifles. You'll see on this rifle, the rear sight is nearly identical in form and figure to the Mexican Mausers, like the model 1902, for example. And they also had stuff in service like the rolling block in 7mm. So that stuff would be used through the Pancho Villa era. But pretty neat piece. I mean, this thing, actually pretty neat is an understatement. This thing is incredible. That drum magazine on there, that's rarer than hen's teeth. That's something you won't see every day. That is the evolutionary predecessor to the snail drum magazines you see on the artillery Lugers from the World War I era. And it was designed by the same designer. But those magazines and these rifles, they were issued 2 rifles per crew in German air crews, and those magazines would have accompanied them. Those magazines somehow do not exist today. They are just unheard of. So to have a rifle, let alone a rifle with this big snail drum magazine, is just incredible. The Trommel magazine. So moving on to the center here, this Mauser Model 1916 semi-automatic rifle, also something that went through a few iterations before it got to this final stage. This uses a delayed blowback system. Mind you, the Mondragon at the front of the table was a gas-operated system. This Mauser is built like a high-quality watch. These things had such high-tolerance machining involved in the production of them that they were kind of overdone, in my opinion. When they were used in German military service in aircraft, also, these and those were used in German aircraft in World War I. A pretty neat little side story all on its own. The fact that they had semi-autos in aircraft in World War I, wild. Kind of an unknown little side story in that conflict. This gun, though, had plenty of issues because it actually required lubricated ammunition, which is something we find out later with John Pederson's rifle. And they had a lot of malfunctions in aircraft during that time frame. They were real finicky. Everything fit real tight in this rifle. But if you cycle it and feel it in person, you would understand that this thing is just a wonderful piece of gun artwork. Also a wonderful piece of engineering. It just was not right for its intended purpose. It was not a rugged military rifle. At the rear of the table here, we have something you probably won't see for another decade at least. There was only ever 24 of these made. This is a Japanese copy of John Pederson's toggle lock rifle. Almost an improvement on it in a sense. They started with what he brought to Japan in 1932. He showed off a Vickers manufactured Pederson toggle lock rifle, and they liked it. They ended up copying it as early as 1932 when the Japanese army started testing semi-automatics. So they started with Nambu Rifle Company, gave them a contract to develop a semi-auto. And then Tokyo Gas and Electric came into play and copied the ZH-29. And General Yoshida at Koishikawa Arsenal backed this project, once again with the Pederson style toggle lock, and showed up to the tests in 1935. Nippon Special Steel Company at that time had a Pederson already in the tests, and this showed up, and him being part of the army and backed by them, this got favored quite a bit quicker than the Nippon Special Steel being a private company made rifle. But this thing, if you look at it and feel everything, the fit and finish, it's actually a really well built rifle. It really has some sweet lines to it. If you look at this rotary magazine and the underbelly on it, it's reminiscent of what we see in the Johnson rifles that came later. So these were tested in 1935 and 1936. 24 in total were made. What happened in 1936 was the Japanese entered into what became the Second Sino-Japanese War. And so once that conflict broke out, all interest in semi-automatic rifle development was halted. And so these got sidelined, which aids in why they are so rare today. In World War II, the Japanese army used bolt actions mainly, the Arisakas. And so stuff like this was put to the side. The Navy started testing stuff in 1942, 1943. They started copying the M1 Garand, but that's a whole different story. This gun is a piece of artwork. It's a piece of rare military history. It's something you will not see outside of Rock Island Auction Company. You just won't find this. These three rare semi-automatic rifles are the precursor to what we know of today in the modern semi-automatic rifle. This is the beginning. This is it. These are things you will not see in another decade at least. And these are going to be offered in our August premiere sale, and you can get your chance to own one.